Evening, members, members and officers and members of the public. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting on the 28th of April. Just some housekeeping. If the fire alarm is activated, vacate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assemble in Hawley Square on the Green. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. Please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones and do not make or receive calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and will subsequently be broadcast on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? That's a no, I believe. The following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item 4, Councillors Keane, Yates and Whitehead. Item 5, Councillors Austin, Wing, Christensen and Whitehead. Item 6, Councillor Yates. Item 7, Councillor Yates. Does no one wants to speak on item 8? 1 second.
No.
Oh.
Item 5 as well, sorry.
Item 5 is very popular. Councillor Duckworth. Item 4. Oh, yeah. Okay, we have a note of those. Just remind me if I overlook you when we get there. There are no apologies for absence this evening. Does anyone have any interest to declare in the items of business on the agenda this evening? Minutes of the previous meeting to approve the summary of recommendations and the decision of the Cabinet held on the 17th of March 2022. I propose we move the minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bob Bayford. Do members agree? Item 4, Asset Management Old Town Hall. To introduce Councillor Rees-Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. Members will see in the agenda the council wishes to seek a tenant for the Old Town Hall in Margate under a new lease agreement. A letting would provide an ongoing revenue stream for us and help mitigate against its empty property costs, which currently stand at circa £13,500 per year as a cost to the council for ongoing maintenance, insurance, utilities and rates and stuff like that. A significant amount of renovation work is required to bring the Old Town Hall up to standard, and this will be reflected in any new lease deal, either by reflecting this in the initial lease price asked or by offering a rent-free period in the first year, or a reduced rent over, say, 1 or 2 years if required and subject to negotiation. Therefore, I would like to put to my fellow Cabinet members that we decide on approving the following recommendations. First, to let the property via a commercial lease. Second, to give delegated authority to the Director of Property in consultation with the Principal Surveyor to market the premises and negotiate heads of terms for a lease. And number 3, give delegated authority to the Director of Law and Democracy to sign all documents necessary to give effect to the disposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. To speak under 20.1, Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Leader. The future of the Old Town Hall is an important decision for Margate. The building is an integral part of the town's history, and I'm pleased that action is being considered to address the deterioration of this heritage building. It was previously considered by the Council in 2018, but no action followed and the deterioration has continued. It is a shame that no proposals from the community are considered to have met the required standards for the building to continue as a community asset, but I'm pleased that the plan is for Thanet Council to retain ownership and for the building to be leased out to include repairing the property. However, this is a Grade 2 listed building and I'm concerned that a commercial development would need to substantially alter the interior to make it suitable for their purposes. This would clearly involve planning consent, which I hope will be sensitive to retaining the character of the interior. The building also houses the vault and adjoins the Margate Museum and provides a fire exit. Although it was the previous home of the Charter Trustees, there has been no communication with the Charter Trustees and, I believe, Margate Museum, an issue that should be addressed immediately. Finally, we learnt from the experience with Dreamland that a long lease can in effect mean that the asset is as good as sold. I hope this will be given full consideration when the terms of the lease are drawn up. Thank you.
Councillor Pugh, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Councillor Keane. All of that certainly will be taken into consideration. I think it's important to note as well, as you said, that the council explored the option for, trying to do something with the Old Town Hall in 2018. It's important that we move on this rather than have buildings such as this continue to deteriorate and they're not be used. So that's, of course, our priority. I think, particularly the Old Town Hall, this is, as I said, an opportunity for us to create a significant revenue stream for the council while still retaining ownership of the building. There may be a significant renovation cost, as I think I already stated, but of course we can at least try and see what ambition there is, particularly for a commercial lease, and if there isn't, then we'll go back to the drawing board. But let's see what will come in.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. To speak under 20.1, Councillor Yates.
Thank you. So this question's about cultural and heritage. Well, it's about the Old Town Hall, of course, but it's about the Levelling Up Fund Round 2. I have heard that it's not possible that the Levelling Up Fund Round 2 can be used, but I would just like to question that, because this fund is there specifically for cultural and heritage assets, and on part of the website it does say MPs can provide formal priority support to one bid in this round. This means MPs who provided formal priority support to unsuccessful bids in the first round can provide formal priority support in a bid in this round. So just want complete clarity, yes or no, can MPs apply for doing up assets within that, because there's not only the Old Town Hall, there's also Winter Gardens as well, which is prime for some government money to be done up. Thank you.
My understanding on the levelling up is that you have one shot at it. The MPs only get one shot for their district, which has obviously been fulfilled with the Margate Digital. But I would ask Louise Askew if she could just confirm that is the situation regarding the levelling up funds, to confirm that. Thank you.
Yeah, so each constituent area can submit one bid with support from the MP, and we have had both for Ramsgate and Margate support from our MPs for those bids, which means over the whole of the Levelling Up Fund programme, so round 1 and round 2, we've had our allocation of bids.
Hopefully that, I think you'll find Sir Roger Gale is using his second round bidding for Herne Bay, because that's outside of our district, but I'm glad that he's able to use his bidding allowance for another district, because that's good. It's all about the whole area being levelled up. So thank you for confirming that, Louise. And Councillor Pugh.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say also as well that, of course, as Louise has just explained, the process and the constraints that there are, let's not forget that we do have Margate Digital, and that levelling up bid that we were incredibly successful with, which we only got in just in the nick of time. And of course, if more support had been probably given to that, and officers were able to prepare for that, we probably could have put in a bigger application and a bigger ask. But unfortunately we weren't, so I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of that and the blame game, but unfortunately that's the situation and that's where we are.
Okay, next to speak under 20.1, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you very much, Leader. As historically we've previously had struggles with the enforcement of full repairing leases on our buildings, and considering the listed nature and historical significance of the Old Town Hall, will Council be given not only information on the estimated costs of full repairs, but also proposed enforcement procedures for the full repairing lease and the timescale for major repairs within the arranged lease to ensure overview of the upkeep of this important building? Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to respond, Councillor Pugh?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I'm sure that's something that we can look into and we can explore with the property team. Of course, we want to make sure that, if we do sign over a commercial lease, that, the works are then commenced and that it is properly used. I can't give more of a confirmation of that than I can, but of course I'll check back with the officers and I'll get back to you on that, because I'm sure if any information that we can share, I'd be happy for all members to see it.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh.
Chief Executive, you'd like to just come in as well?
Yes, really just to, confirm really Councillor Pugh's commentary there. I mean, in effect, what you're talking about is the lease itself. And I'm sure, within reason, beyond any commercial sensitivity issues, we can share the content of the lease, which will contain all of the elements that you're talking about.
Thank you.
And finally, to speak under 20.1 on this item, Councillor Duckworth.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, there's going to be a saving of 13,500 a year, it says in the report, just on the costs that you're paying at the moment. So I was just wondering what you were going to do with that. It doesn't seem like a lot, but maybe some maintenance of some of the parks that missed out, some of the children's play areas and things like that missed out on the recent funding round.
Councillor Pugh, I'm not sure if you have the answer to that or if there's an officer you can look to. But,
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Cupp has just indicated he's happy if the money goes to open spaces and parks and play areas. I haven't decided what I'll be spending the money on. It doesn't particularly go into my current account. But you're right, Councillor Duckworth. If we can secure a commercial lease, and that creates a saving for the council, and of course then there's the revenue on top of what we'll then get for it as well. So I'm sure that we can explore ways that we can spend that.
Sorry, Matt. I didn't see.
I turned around to look at Matt and see his face, and
Sorry.
I think we've got other reasons to.
Sorry, I'm sure Matt has already spent it, but perhaps he'd like to tell us where.
Let me check his calendar.
It's not that we've spent it, it's that effectively there'd be no assumption about a saving. It would just be redistributed to repairs elsewhere within the organisation. So it's effectively ring fenced for the repairs pot where we under provide anyway. So
Yes, a very good financial answer there. But I would like to reiterate the fact that it's not so much about the saving of that, it's the fact that it's the ambition is for 65,000 to go into our revenue, which is what really we need to be about looking. That's what we need to be looking at. Obviously, community asset transfers and bids, etc., need to be brought into the mix. But there are some times when it makes commercial sense for the council to actually go seeking for sizable rents, and it is a magnificent building, and we want it to be restored back to its magnificent self, but we also need to earn some revenue at it, and it's just sad that it's been sat there for so long, decaying and not earning any revenue. Councils really do need to maximise their revenue on their assets, so I'm looking forward to the market testing to see who comes forward. I hope it's going to be very popular. Yes, Councillor Pugh, if you would like to reiterate the recommendations and move the item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. One, recommendation to let the property via commercial lease. 2, to give delegated authority to the Director of Property in consultation with the Principal Surveyor to market the premises and negotiate heads of terms for a lease. And 3, give delegated authority to the Director of Law and Democracy to sign all documents necessary to give effect to the disposal.
So that has been moved by Councillor Pugh. Do I have a seconder? Councillor David Saunders. Do members agree? Item 5, Town Centre Parking Review Update. To introduce, Councillor David Saunders.
Thank you, Leader, and I'm pleased to see the level of interest from other members on what is a complex subject and somewhat provocative subject, particularly considering the level of inconsiderate parking that we appear to experience during the summer months in particular. On January the 12th, at the Town Council meeting, Councillor Crittenden proposed a motion to Council that the growth of town centre residential developments throughout the district are putting pressure on the residential and visitor parking to the detriment of both residents and visitors, and I think we all agree with that. Whilst it is within the local plan, in accordance with the national policy and consistent with climate change targets, that parking facilities will not be required or expected for residential development planning applications within the town centres. This does not take into account the needs of workers, especially key workers or residents with disabilities who genuinely need access to their own transport. Few of those most affected are not necessarily within areas that are covered by the residential parking schemes, or in a position to pay for the annual season tickets for our car parks. The result has been increased pressure on what limited parking is available in the streets surrounding our town centres and beyond. Thanet District Council recognises these challenges and commits to undertake a district-wide impact assessment of increased pressures on both on and off-street parking in our town centres arising from the expansion of town centre residential development, taking into account relevant factors such as access to electric vehicle charging, public transport links, cycle storage and pedestrian safety, especially, can I say, at night. In consultation with KCC, ward councillors, other stakeholders, i.e. public transport providers and the public in general, in order to develop solutions that support the community, recognising the need for some groups to have access to safe personal transport due to work conditions or disadvantage. This motion was debated at the Town Council meeting on the 12th and then forwarded to Cabinet this evening. This paper discusses this and proposes that Cabinet agree to undertake a well-evidenced strategic review of parking access within the district and then develop a district-wide parking strategy, something that I'm very, very keen on. Therefore, I propose that we agree recommendations 3.1 in the report this evening, and that reads, agree to undertake a well-evidenced strategic review of parking access the district and then develop a district-wide parking strategy. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. To speak under 20.1, first I have Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very keen to support this idea. Obviously, as Councillor Saunders has highlighted and as Councillor Crittenden highlighted in her motion, as a council that's declared a climate emergency, we want to reduce the amount of use of petrol vehicles, but we see that this can't be achieved overnight. We also need to be keeping up pressure on public transport providers if we're ever going to make our towns friendly to users of public transport and pedestrians. So as part of the work that we do on this, I would urge Cabinet to be liaising strongly with public transport providers and also to be looking at the planning of town centres so that they are more pedestrian friendly and more cyclist friendly. With regard to the sorts of things that Councillor Saunders has highlighted around inconsiderate parking, which obviously causes huge difficulties, for example, for our waste collection and emergency vehicles, a general strategy of reducing on-street parking and making better use of our car parks seems to be a sensible way to go. But in order to do that, we need to give the consultant permission to think completely outside the box. For example, in Ramsgate, we had a proposal from a developer to work with us to do some building on one of our car parks, which would actually have retained the same number of parking spaces as we have now, or possibly increased them. But that was not something that anybody took up, successive cabinet members or senior officers, which seems a shame. any kind of partnership that might help improve our parking facilities seems to me to be worth consideration, and I would urge that Cabinet encourage the consultant to think as widely as possible about this. I'm also a little concerned about the idea that a district-wide parking strategy might mean that we think we have to have exactly the same type of facilities and the same arrangements in every part of the district, which seems inappropriate because we've got a variety of different needs across the district. For example, I know Councillor Crittenden suggested previously that Staffordshire Street car park, which is massively underused, that part of that could actually be fenced off for residents parking, and I believe was told that if that happened in Ramsgate, it would have to happen everywhere. And yet we have on-street parking arrangements that are radically different in different parts of the district. For example, in Ramsgate, we have traders who would be delighted, give their eye teeth to have the 20-minute or 30-minute free on-street parking that there are in some other areas of the district. So we're very keen to see, I think, a consistent strategy and a strategy that covers the whole area, but we don't want to see the consultants' hands tied by trying to make everything exactly the same across the whole area. Thank you.
Councillor Saunders, if you'd like to respond, please.
I would indeed. Thanks for the comment. And I absolutely agree that we need to move parking off of the street onto our own car parks, because of course that increases our revenue, and rather than it go into the decrim fund and ultimately KCC, I'd much prefer it to come into our own coffers so that we can make good use of that to enforce the situation much better than we do at the moment. So thank you very much for your comments.
So would we all. Thank you, Councillor Saunders.
Yes, and obviously Councillor Saunders will give the consultant, who I'm sure consultants are, they do have a tendency to be able to think outside the box. It's just a case of we will ensure that he has or she has a very wide-ranging thought process on it. Next to speak under 20.1, Councillor Wing.
Thank you. Obviously, we supported the motion, and I'm really glad that we're moving this forward, because apart from waste, parking and car parking is my second most moan that I get. I've been working with residents really for the last 12 months, abiding by COVID rules, mainly meetings outside, and it started with residents telling me they wanted residents parking schemes. But as we talked over the 12-month period, other people joined us on Spencer Square at a 2-metre distance. Sometimes it was quite a lot of us, and sometimes not many of us. But other topics became relevant. So care workers, one of them, consistently being fined because they cannot find anywhere to park. Obviously, the impact of tourist workers and the negative impact of residents parking, which is to push everything back. So Nelson Crescent and the Paragon, they're quite happy with their residents parking, but it means that everything's pushed back and there are available spaces during the day. Residents, I found, have a great deal of knowledge and information and a very real lived experience of parking in their communities. And like Councillor Austin said, it has to be put in the context of your community. They also have some very good ideas, actually, and obviously some very real concerns. Will the Cabinet ensure the following happens as part of the review or consultation, which I welcome and the residents welcome? Residents are consulted and form part of the process, and I don't just mean we hand out a survey monkey questionnaire, that we actually do some of the type of engagement that the residents did with me, even if it is standing in Spencer Square at 2-metre distance from each other. They really do have some good ideas. That there is a review of the present situation, including residents parking, to identify both positives and negatives. Again, there are some real positives with residents parking, and there are some huge negatives, and they need to be looked at. 3, as Councillor Austin said, the context of the communities is considered. So parking at Palm Bay is going to be completely different to parking in the middle of Ramsgate or Broadstairs, and then it will be completely different in the wintertime and the summertime. One size doesn't fit all. Can we try and get some serious joined up thinking? Because part of the problem, I think, with residents parking, and the reason nobody wants to a visitor is not going to parking, residence parking, is the cost per hour. And for me, if we can reduce the cost per hour, so it's less stick and more carrot, then maybe we can force some of those builders and those visitors to actually use our multi-storey in Ramsgate, rather than try and find the free parking spots behind our residence parking scheme. I don't think we've done enough about looking at, if we introduce this, what's the impact on that? And we definitely need to start looking at what we've got and try and identify. I also think signage is a big problem. If you come into Ramsgate, there's no signs directing you to that multi-storey car park. So yeah, signage is another big thing. Also, we've got 2 electric charging points, and it's a real issue for our residents. I know electric cars, there are some, all sorts of opinions over electric cars and the battery recycling, but we have a lot of residents that are moving to hybrids and electric cars. There are 2 available points in Ramsgate, both in the car park. Neither of them work. And again, we need to be looking at, and it's not just about looking at the parking, it's about looking at our planning. Why are some of our developments not having automatic charging points in? Why have we got a residence parking scheme that hasn't got allocated charging points that come out of lampposts? We can put the parking meters there, so obviously we can access the electrics. I just think we need to have a complete review, and I hope that this review will work. Coming from the local plan, I mean, it's often said that I want people to not have cars, and I would love people to not have cars, and actually we've got one of the lowest car ownerships in the country. But the local plan clearly states that for every 116 people that are actively working, 100 of them have to travel out of Thanet to work. So the reality of just saying we don't need cars is not there, because the reality for our workers is they actually need to leave Thanet to get employment. We are surrounded by the sea on 3 sides. So I think we have to get some reality about what we can and can't expect our residents to do. And at this present moment in time, they need to drive cars to work. So I absolutely welcome this review. I'm hoping that both residents and ward councillors can be an active part of it, and I really hope that we come with some positive changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wing. Councillor Saunders, there's
Yes.
quite a lot of points to go back on, but
I'm not going to
Sure,
cover
we
all
can.
the points, but thank you, Councillor Wing, and thank you for mentioning Spencer Square on 4 occasions. I haven't forgotten Spencer Square. But as far as the strategy is concerned, I've got your name down as one of the consultees, because I think you've got some good ideas. I think they're absolutely right, but I said right at the start that it can be a provocative subject, parking. We have looked at it in the past. We looked at equalising the parking charges throughout the district, because there was a time when I was being told that it's cheaper to park in Cliftonville than it is in Broadstairs, etc., etc. So we tried to harmonise the parking. But once we get into it, I'll ensure, because I do get a lot of contact, and I know Penny gets a lot of contact with regards to a lot of aspects to parking and the car usage. Electric car points, I'm expecting Councillor Yates to raise that when he speaks under 20.1, is another subject. Whenever I travel up to London, as I do, as you well know, in a coach to see a certain football team, I see a number of on-street charging points en route, and we have discussed this, and the issue is with regards to the supplier and the infrastructure that we have at the moment. But all of those aspects that you raised, I will make sure that they are carried through as part of the strategy, because we need to do it, and we need to do it once, and it needs to have a life expectancy that is not 1 or 2 years. It needs to be a decade at least. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders.
thank you. And I'd ask officers to pick up on the fact that our electric charging points aren't working. And one particular interest I have there is the that you mentioned was the care worker permit. Maybe we can have a look at a special concession for our care workers. Yeah, I think Penny. Yeah, I mean that they are an absolute you know, they are the angels of the district. So I think, you know, if there's something we could do, so I'd ask Penny if you could respond on that.
I wasn't going to comment on that, actually. I was going to comment on the electric charging points. Sorry. Yeah, we know they are out of action. They are out of contract, and we are part of a Kent-wide contract to redo all of our electric charging points and add more, so that's the positive. We just aren't sure when we're going to be on that programme. So they have already started in other parts of the county, and we are just waiting for our turn.
Could I, because there was a Isle of Thanet news report when the previous administration was in charge, and the leader at the time, Councillor Everett, there was actually a news piece in Thanet, I've downloaded that actually stated we would have 300 new charging points across Thanet by the end of 2022.
Perhaps I could ask you to dig it out and send it through. Yes, but I think that might be a bit ambitious, but maybe you can dig the article out and we can remind.
30 would be great.
Okay, thank you. Point taken. And again, I'll ask obviously Councillor Saunders to have a look at whether we can do something on the care worker permits. I think that'll be, yeah.
Certainly on the list for our fees and charges next time we review them, but I'm hoping we can do something. And you'll see the odds are against us. Even the providers are not providing, so it's not always ourselves. Thank you.
And no special concessions for Charlton supporters either. So next to speak under 20.1, Councillor Crittenden.
Thank you. I'm going to try and be mindful of the footy. As the originator of the motion, I welcome the report and the recommendation 3.1, in particular the external consultant, which actually isn't repeated in the wording of 3.1, but I particularly welcome that. There are a wide-ranging issues around the district. I'm going to leave it to the external consultant to recognise that. I obviously hope that the remit will include consultation with ward councillors and the public. But the motion actually came out of the problems in King Street in Ramsgate, and one of the things that I hope that the external consultant will be able to recognise is that there are some areas like that have seen an increasing residentialisation that has meant that actually King Street's no longer a part of the town centre in the same way as it was. And I know that there are going to be other parts of the district that will also have changed. And in King Street, that's been a progression that has happened over 20 years or more. And so just to say thank you, and I hope that it's approved. It sounds all very positive, and I've enjoyed watching the head shakes and the nods and thank you. So they've been very positive feedback that way, maybe not intended, but yeah. But I do want to see that the pressure on residential parking alleviated, and we do have a number of people that do need to be able to drive, despite whatever. I know we're moving with a green agenda. I really worry about residential parking schemes. They are quite elitist. If you can afford it, great, but they do only end up spreading out the pressure in other areas. So that is something that concerns me. But I'm going to trust the external consultant to do their job. And thank you very much.
Thank you. You'd like to...
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I agree that the residential parking scheme that we have, in my opinion, is not overly expensive when you compare it with the on-street charge that it eliminates if you are a resident. But it is very selective to certain areas, and obviously those areas are subject to other conditions that mean that we are able to introduce the resident parking scheme in conjunction with KCC, and that's hopefully something that the consultant, when we get going, and the strategy will cover. Obviously, with my finance hat on, I don't want it to be the situation where we're penalising ourselves. What we need to do is to come up with a scheme where the residents have the benefit and the visitors pay for that benefit. But whether that's possible or not, I really don't know. But I would like to see some scheme where areas which attract, and we have them in Broadstairs, particularly on Western Esplanade, etc. along there, which is, you know, must be 3/4 of a mile long, free parking on both sides. There's got to be some revenue there, and we've got to do something there to actually offset our residents as far as the parking charges are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Yeah, I'm all for a toll booth at St Nicholas Roundabout. I think that's the way forward, and I'm not joking. 20.1, speaking under 20.1, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Leader. We were recently informed via Councillor Saunders' very prompt response to my question at full council regarding disabled parking provision and enforcement that a consultant is being appointed to aid in the development of a new disabled parking strategy. May I confirm whether this commission is as part of the overall strategy, or whether we are commissioning a specialist within the area of disability provision, both to bring direct experience and also to engage with members of the disabled community who have considerable and first-hand knowledge in this area? Thank you.
Councillor Saunders.
I would hope to think that it would become part of our overall strategy, and one of the areas that I'm concerned with regards to the disabled parking, and you and I know we've had discussion on the personalised, if you want to call it that, but it's not personalised, parking bays outside residential properties, is that I think part of the strategy we need to look at the overall dimensions of those markings, because again, the type of vehicles that the individuals that have the blue badge will drive, and they need, some need to have access at the rear, increased access because they have wheelchairs, etc., or lifts, etc. Some blue badge holders don't necessarily need that, but I think we need, within the strategy, to review the minimum sizes, which I have in front of me, as you would expect. I think we need to review the length of those to reflect the needs of our residents rather than the national residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Next to speak under 20.1 is Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Leader. Just got 3 questions, but start with, yeah, fully support this motion from Councillor Crittenden, and especially the way with this is talking about the right things. We are talking about key workers, people with disabilities, cycle storage, pedestrian safety. So the 3 questions I've got, I'm sorry to disappoint Councillor Saunders with EVs, but I'm going to talk about bike storage. So in some London councils, what they have is you have residents parking, but then you have bicycle parking, and I would hope that the bicycle parking would be less than the parking for cars. And I see that as a bit of a revenue maker for the council, because if you do find there is quite a lot of pavement space across our towns, and if you can have bike storage on those pavements, then you could actually use that as a way of making quite considerable money, because there is unfortunately quite a lot of bike theft. So hopefully we can take that on board. That's the first question. Second question, we've got Mill Lane just next door, really, and we do have residents just across the road who do struggle when Theatre Royal is open, because Mill Lane doesn't actually open for 24/7. So one potential option is actually keep that car park open later, and as the growth of Margate happens, hopefully we'll see more revenue from that. And my third question is just about, specific to Margate, instead of just thinking about TDC assets, we have 2 absolutely massive car parks right in the middle of Old Town. It's just the other side of Old Town, and that's Morrison's and Pound Stretcher car park. And I'd hope the consultant would be open to discuss options where you actually speak to Pound Stretcher, who have, even when at weekends that car park is empty, it's in the middle of Old Town. Are there any opportunities that we can actually make a deal with Pound Stretcher to use that as an Old Town car park with some kind of agreement with the council? So that's my question for number 3. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Councillor Saunders, busily writing down there if you'd like to respond.
Well, I'm writing them down because Councillor Yates shadows me on finance, and you've come up with some reasonable finance there, and maybe it will, if we can introduce bicycle storage It will save KCC having to repaint their lampposts on a very regular basis. So that's a good idea. I'm not sure with the College Road car park that you mentioned. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's not overly full, and I'm not sure whether we can get into some discussion. I would hope that we may be able to.
Definitely can look into it.
So Officer Button's going to look at that. Mill Lane, well, I think we had the same issue, and we've had a recent issue at the Ramsgate multi-storey Leopold Street with regards to having those car parks open for extended hours. It does attract some unsavoury behaviour, and in fact, not only late at night, when I was here earlier in the week, we had skateboarders next door coming from the top floor right the way down on their skateboard. So it's got to be looked at, and to have it open that length of time would require increased security. And I'm not so sure at this point in time we have that sort of resource available, but it's certainly something to think about. And as you quite rightly say, it's a revenue stream I think we need to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. I think on the hopefully when our new super duper skateboard park opens, then they will have somewhere to go.
Unfortunately, it won't match the one at Folkestone, which is now a catchment area for local skateboarders. I know that because my great-grandson's a champion of his age, a skateboarder.
Oh, you have
he's
to transfer him
chomping
over
at
here.
the bits to go to Folkestone.
I will have to poach him for over here then. So I think the other point as well is that I don't think we're actually taking enough advantage of digital solutions for car parking. I know that we did have a pilot scheme, and I think that's still running quite smoothly now. I know it didn't in the first place up at Trinity car park, but that is definitely another solution that can also aid with the resident parking, especially it'll allow flexible charges as well, which can be changed during the winter for the summer. So the more we can move towards that and use technology, then maybe that all fits in with the overall plan. So thank you for the good points that you've raised there. So Councillor Saunders, you have moved the recommendation, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Bob Bayford. Do members agree? Moving on to item 6 is the Margate Levelling Up Fund third-party grant. To introduce, Councillor Rees-Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. In June last year, we approved the decision to submit a Levelling Up Fund bid to Central Government to enable East Kent College Group to deliver the Margate Digital Campus. In October 2021, we were successfully awarded just over £6.3 million to enable delivery of this project. The Council is the accountable body for the Levelling Up Fund, and as such has an agreement with Central Government to deliver the project as outlined in the funding submission. However, it will be the responsibility of East Kent College Group to deliver the digital campus, as they are the experts in the field of education, and I definitely am not. This funding will enable the delivery of a state-of-the-art digital skills and training provision in the town centre, which will undoubtedly support the whole district's economic recovery and levelling up of its communities, both in terms of training opportunities and pathways, as well as increasing footfall in the high street. The East Kent College Group will be provided the monies for a funding grant agreement, which will include the conditions required from the Council, monitoring and evaluation and expectations in relation to delivery of the project. I would like to recommend that Cabinet 1 approve the use of grants which exceed £250,000 to third parties to deliver the agreed Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities funded project, which is £6.306078 pounds, £6.3 million. Capital grant to the East Kent College Group to deliver the Margate Digital project identified in the Margate Levelling Up funding bid. And number 2 is each grant agreement is signed under deed by the Director of Law and Democracy and the Director of Finance and Section 151 officer, and is witnessed by a member of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. To speak under 20.1, Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Leader. Quite a specific question I've got, so apologies. I haven't actually given you notice of this question. And I'd have liked to have done a bit more digging into this, but it's just a general question. I believe Margate School were mentioned in the original bid, but they weren't a formal stakeholder to the bid. Are they going to be involved in this project? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Yates, for your question. I think you're right. I think there's an ongoing discussion with East Kent College Group and the Margate School about them potentially being incorporated into some sort of space within the digital campus. I'm not aware of where that is now or how they've progressed with that. Louise may be able to add a little bit more information to that, but of course that would be, sorry, I can't see you, there we go. That would be conversations between East Kent College Group and the Margate School. But I'm sure the council will be supportive of whatever outcome there is.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer. So the grant is for the building to bring that back into use for the campus, and then EKC Group are talking to the Margate School about having some of that space within the building that they will run services for students and businesses out of that. So it will be like a lease agreement with the college. So my understanding is those conversations are ongoing, but there'll be a third party and we'll need to kind of work through the college to inform the outputs.
Thank you.
So Councillor Pugh has moved the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Councillor George Carr. Do members agree? Item 7, Margate Town Deal, project grant to third parties. To introduce, Councillor Rees-Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. The council is also the accountable body for the Margate Town Deal, and there are a number of projects within the £22.2 million funding allocated from the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities that will be delivered by third parties. The Margate Town Investment Plan includes the projects that will be delivered, and officers have been working with the Town Deal Board and delivery partners to progress the Green Book compliant business cases in order to draw down the funding. The business case for the Creative Land Trust was completed last year, and central government has awarded the funding for that project. Trustees are being interviewed, and the Charity Commission has awarded the trust with charity status. This is an incredibly exciting time for the creative industries in Thanet, and the project brings with it significant opportunities for economic growth. A capital sum of £6 million is allocated to the development of the Creative Land Trust, with up to £900,000 in revenue to support participation and engagement for people in the district to engage with the creative sector, with a particular focus on building capacity and providing employment pathways. Only last week, 3 more business case summary documents were submitted to central government, including the Coastal Wellbeing Intervention. As part of this programme of projects, Grass Cliftonville CIC is intending to deliver a project at the Oval Bandstand and Gardens. In July 2021, the Council transferred the Oval Bandstand to Grass Cliftonville CIC. They have developed a robust 5-year strategy, which sets out a clear commercial strategy to ensure the new Cliftonville Pavilion is financially self-sustainable. The Town Deal funding will enable the delivery of improved facilities and help to unlock other funding. In order to enable the Creative Land Trust and Grass Cliftonville CIC to deliver, I would like to recommend the following. 1. The Cabinet approve the payments of grants to third parties to deliver the agreed Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities funded projects. These grant payments are £6 million capital grant to the Margate Creative Land Trust to deliver the outcomes identified in the Margate Town Investment Plan, and up to £900,000 revenue funding for participation and engagement as part of the Scaling Margate's Creative and Production Intervention and delivery of the Creative Land Trust. And finally, £500,000 capital grant to Grass for the Oval Bandstand and Gardens project. And then number 2, each grant agreement is signed as a deed by the Director of Law and Democracy and Director of Finance and Section 151 officer, and is witnessed by a member of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. To speak under 20.1, Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Leader. 2 questions again. First question. The second bullet point, where it goes up to £900,000 revenue funding for participation and engagement as part of the as part of the scaling Margate's creative and production intervention, and delivery of creative land trust. Do we know what proportion is going towards delivery of the creative land trust and what the expected proportion is going towards participation and engagement? We're talking about £900,000, so it'd be good to know that. My second question is more of a comment, but I'll say it anyway. So £6 million for Margate Creative Land Trust. Currently, I don't believe the trustees are finalised yet. So then we kind of have to rely on, well, what are the charitable objectives? And I think it's I'll read them out anyway, because I think this is important. The charity's objectives are specifically restricted to promote arts, craft and craftsmanships for the public benefit, in particular, but not exclusively, by providing or facilitating access to affordable workspace for the production of arts and crafts to those in need in the district of Thanet, in the county of Kent and surrounding areas. I guess my only question there is, how wide of an area is Margate like for purchasing this property? Because the charitable objectives say Thanet, so are we taking Margate as the kind of wider Margate that could be edging on like part of Broadstairs? I don't have an objection to that. It'd be good to know that. Well, sorry. So I guess that's the second question. Thanks.
So, Councillor.
No, I think it's the officer.
I would like to defer this to our Director of Regeneration.
Thanks. So your first point about the percentage for setting up the Community Land Trust, it'll be a minimal amount in the first year just to support the recruitment of a chief executive. The majority is going to be going towards all that participation, engagement, activity, and we've started to put a paper together that will go to the Land Trust Board that they can approve, and so that will allocate some funding with the anticipation that some posts will be recruited around engagement and capacity building for the sector, so that as the assets come online, the organisations are prepared and ready to take advantage of those opportunities. So it's a very minimal amount. It's about engagement and pathways. The second point about the charitable objectives, the lawyers that we engaged to put together the Charity Commission application just advised that it was best to keep it broader rather than really narrow, and they had put together the charity application for the London Land Trust, and it was just through their experience of charity work that it made sense to make it broader, just so that at any point, if it was looking outside of boundaries, it wasn't going to be stifled. And obviously some of our business parks are kind of bordering boundaries between towns within the district, so it made sense to do that at the time rather than stifle it for the future.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Pugh has moved the recommendations. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bayford.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, with what's happening with Margate and Ramsgate, an awful lot of money coming into Thanet. And in the past, we've seen money coming in, and we haven't always sort of seen the right results come out of it. And often we found out sort of almost after the event that things didn't work out the way they were going to. Could I ask that we have a regular report to Cabinet on the progress of all these investment funds for both Margate and Ramsgate? I think it's very useful.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bayford.
I was, sorry, Chair Leader, I was just going to say that definitely will happen, Councillor Bayford.
Yes, and it's also backed up with the scrutiny panels that are set up for the Ramsgate and Margate levelling up, and maybe something, not a scrutiny panel, but an advisory panel can be for the Margate town deal as well, because there's so much going on and people are getting confused with all the different funds coming in. I mean, it's a lovely situation to have, a problem with all this money coming in, but yeah, I think it's ideal, and I think the website is being fed regularly as well, so if, you know, that's a good signpost to point people towards the different funds. But yeah, I mean, regular to Cabinet is quite important, because it's watched by quite a lot of people and residents, and obviously followed by members, so I think it's a good idea.
Chair, sorry, I just wanted to add, I think, of course, we've got the Margate Town Deal Board, which I sit on as a member and is included a lot of panel members. So I'm not sure an advisory panel may be, I think we might be trying to reinvent the wheel a bit. But certainly to check in conjunction with officers, maybe we could do a bit of a regular kind of summary document that's shared with members. I don't think it necessarily needs to be a members briefing, but something that then can be circulated that everyone knows, because I agree, certainly the Regen team are working flat out on this. We're hitting milestones all the time, and the certain work and everything that's having to be churned out, there is quite a lot going on. So maybe that's something that we can look into and provide to members.
Thank you. And thank you for the suggestion, Councillor Bayford. It sounded like it was popular here, so never known you to be so popular. So this has been recommended moved by Councillor Pugh. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jill Bayford. She's feeling rather left out. Do members agree? So moving on to item 8. It's I've had a quiet night this evening. So this is the executive appointment outside body, Manston Skills and Employment Board. At our council meeting on the 24th of February 2011, that any list of outside bodies will be split into 2 lists. Those outside bodies that relate to executive functions and hence should be appointed by the Cabinet, and those that are appointed by Council. So it is for Council to decide. The current situation is that the Manston Skills and Employment Board, we've added onto the list of the executive outside bodies, and we just need to appoint a representative from the Cabinet, and I'm proposing that Councillor Pugh the Cabinet agrees to appoint Councillor Rhys Pugh to the Manston Skills and Employment MSE Board. So I am moving that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rhys Pugh. Do members agree? So he needs some educating. So. Okay, members. Well, thank you very much for this evening, and officers for your time. And that concludes the business at 7:57. 3 minutes to kick off.